Um, this deep dive request you sent in, it's really got my brain going. Multidimensional consciousness
Yeah.
is such a fascinating topic, and the sources you shared everything from astral projection stories to discussions on how energy work plays into it.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
What I find fascinating is how these sources try to bridge like personal experiences with like trying to find scientific backing for these things. Like we've got people describing astral travel right alongside scientific studies about brainwave frequencies during meditation.
It's like that line between ancient wisdom and modern science is starting to blur a little bit.
Exactly.
Like in that episode of Beyond the Veil, they had that neuroscientist, Dr. Robert Williams, measuring brainwave activity during meditation.
Yeah.
What exactly were they seeing in those readings?
So Dr. Williams found that when someone went into deep meditation, their brain waves shifted. They shifted from beta waves, which are associated with our normal, waking state, to alpha waves. And alpha waves, they're often linked to being relaxed and a more receptive state of awareness.
So it's not just that people feel more relaxed when they meditate. Their brainwaves are literally shifting into a different state.
Yeah.
And some researchers believe this alpha state, it might make people more open to experiencing these, multidimensional phenomena we keep reading about in these sources.
And that brings us nicely to the whole astral projection thing, which if you look at it a certain way, lots of these sources describe it as an out-of-body experience.
Right.
Do you remember Michael Chen's story?
Yeah.
He talked about feeling vibrations and the sensation of separating from his physical body.
That's interesting because that's a pretty common thread in a lot of these accounts.
Yeah.
And if what we're reading about these altered brainwave states is true, it makes you wonder, is astral projection really about physically going somewhere?
Right.
Or is it more about like consciousness shifting to a different frequency, maybe even different dimension?
It's a really interesting idea, but for those of us who haven't quite mastered astral travel just yet,
Right.
what can we actually take away from all this? Is there anything in all this material that we can apply to our regular lives?
That's where I get a little stuck. It's one thing to read about these extraordinary experiences, but how do you actually integrate them into your own life?
Yeah.
One thing that the sources do mention a lot is energy work.
Yes. The sources really emphasize how important thoughts and emotions are, and not just as like internal experiences that we have, but as actual forces that can impact our energy field. This is where that whole idea of a protective sphere of light comes into play.
Okay. I have to admit, even for me, that one sounds a little out there.
Sure. But whether you take it literally or you think of it more metaphorically, the message beneath it is about cultivating positivity.
Yep.
Sarah Johnson, the energy healer from that Beyond the Veil episode, she described negativity as this kind of cosmic echo chamber.
Okay.
Where negative energy just attracts more negativity.
So it's not just about avoiding bad vibes.
Yeah.
It's about raising your own vibration to a point where that lower energy just can't even touch you.
Exactly.
That's actually really empowering when you think about it like that.
And that's exactly where this idea of multidimensional beings comes in, which several of the sources you sent, they discuss this in depth.
Wait, hold on. There's more. Like, besides us, who else might be inhabiting these other dimensions?
Right.
And how would we even know if they exist?
Well, the sources you shared, they mention beings of light, entities that exist on different planes of existence. Things like angels or spirit guides, even people who have transition from the physical realm to what some call the astral plane.
Astral plane. So is that like, I don't know, a cosmic neighborhood or something?
Yeah.
Are we talking about ghosts here?
Not ghosts in like the traditional sense. Think of it like tuning a radio. You've got all these different frequencies, right? And each frequency carries a different station. Well, the astral plane, at least the way these sources describe it, it's like we're tuning into a different frequency of reality, one where consciousness exists beyond the limitations of our physical bodies.
Okay, so less about spooky encounters and more about different forms of energy and consciousness that we might not be able to fully perceive with our regular senses.
Right.
That actually makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, and the main takeaway isn't really about proving or disproving whether these beings exist. The important thing the sources emphasize is that we're surrounded by energies all the time, both positive and negative, whether we're aware of them or not.
Which kind of brings us back to that idea of protection and cultivating positivity. If we're always interacting with all these different energies, how do we even begin to navigate that? Is it really as simple as just thinking happy thoughts?
It's a bit more nuanced than that. Do you remember that expert panel discussion from the Astral Awakening podcast you shared?
Yeah.
They talked about how important it is to deal with our own personal blockages and limiting beliefs. They said that often our own minds, especially the ego, can be the biggest thing holding us back from experiencing these expanded states of awareness.
So it's not just about shielding ourselves from negativity. It's also about doing the inner work to remove those limitations we put on ourselves.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're not just passively receiving energy, we're actively shaping our own energetic reality.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's talk about some practical steps. Let's say someone is listening to this and they want to explore these concepts more, maybe even try something like astral projection. What would you recommend they start with?
Meditation comes up again and again as like a foundational practice. And not just for reducing stress, but as a way to actually train your consciousness to be more aware of subtle shifts in energy and perception.
So it's like developing any new skill, like learning a musical instrument or something. You've got to practice regularly to build up those perceptual muscles.
Exactly. And the sources suggest that the more you practice focusing your mind and building awareness, the easier it will become to access those altered states where these multidimensional experiences are said to be possible.
That's fascinating. We've talked about astral projection, energy work, but there's still one more topic from your materials that we haven't gotten to yet. Telepathy.
Yeah.
It's like something you'd see in a movie. How did the sources you sent even begin to explain something as complicated as telepathy?
Well, they take a two-pronged approach, looking at it from both a personal and a scientific perspective. Like you sent that episode with the Larson twins, Anna and Sophia.
Right.
They claim to have this like almost constant telepathic connection with each other, even when they were in different countries.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really hard to prove something like that scientifically, but their firsthand stories they're pretty convincing.
It's like they were tapping into this channel of communication that goes beyond words.
Right.
A kind of shared consciousness.
Yeah.
It really makes you think differently about how we connect as humans.
Absolutely. What these sources suggest is that telepathy, just like those other multidimensional experiences we talked about, might be an untapped human potential.
Okay.
Something that we can access more easily as we become more aware and refine our perception.
So like if we could tap into this nonverbal, energetic form of communication, what could that mean for us?
It's an amazing thing to think about.
It really is.
Imagine if we lived in a world where everyone was more empathetic, where we could understand each other's feelings and intentions on a deeper level.
Yeah.
It would certainly lead to fewer misunderstandings,
It's
right?
a really fascinating possibility. You know, going through all these sources with you, it's made me realize that multidimensional consciousness, it's so much bigger than just astral projection or telepathy.
I agree.
It's about exploring the full potential of our minds, our awareness of everything.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we're not limited by the physical world around us, that our consciousness, it has the potential to connect to something much, much greater.
This has been an incredible deep dive. For our listener who's been on this journey with us, absorbing all this information, what's the one thing you really hope they take away from this?
That they are capable of so much more than they realize. By exploring these practices, we've talked about meditation energy work. By cultivating positivity and challenging those limiting beliefs, they can unlock incredible things within themselves.
Wow.
It's a journey of self-discovery that can lead to some truly profound experiences.
That is a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for guiding us through all of this. It's been amazing. And for everyone listening, until next time, keep diving deep and exploring those infinite possibilities within yourselves.